Hebrews in the New Testament. You know, it's a 500-year difference from the book of Malachi in the writings of the New Testament. Some of the books was wrote around about 100 AD, some of them in 90 AD. Okay, the Hebrews, the Hebrews, the exiles that would have had made up the New Testament people was destroyed because they was mixing with the people in the land that didn't go into captivity when those Hebrews went into captivity. See, it was a lot of people living in our land. I showed in the first video how them nations, a whole bunch of nations, just moved in on us. You know, when we started doing that Egyptian religion, everybody started moving in on us because a lot of those nations and peoples did the Egyptian religion. So we were slipping. Okay, in 722 BC, when the king of Assyria placed the Sepharvims in Samaria, the Sepharvims, the Ava, the people from Hamath, the people from Cutter, man, a whole bunch of people they placed in our land, and those people, the Sepharvims, whose Hebrew word is Sephardi, were Babylonian scribes. They love to write books and they love to create history of gods. See, they have to have a history. See, and you can tell their history when it pop up is when they start talking about gods come miraculously saving people. Because that's part of their history. That's part of the Babylonian history. The Egyptians share a similar history with Babylon. You see what I'm saying? Those are idol worshiping nations. They believe in triads, gods, miraculous gods, mothers, and sons ruling and stuff. But the Sephardi Jews, whose Hebrew name is Sepharvim, was in our land. You see what I'm saying? And it tell you that they practiced religion and tried to mix it with ours. You see what I'm saying? See, if you read 2 Kings chapter 17, verse 24, and read it all the way down, you will see that it said that they, you know, tried to follow what we had and also mix with what they had. You see what I'm saying? And look, and the men of Babylon made Sakath, and the men of Cuddar made Norjal, and the men of Hamath made Hishma, and the Avites made Nezhaz and Tartak, and the Sepharvims burnt their children in the fire to Amalek and Amalek. You know, that's what cremations and all that stuff come from. You know, when they started that old cremation stuff, burning your kids up that had defects and stuff, all that stuff come from them. They still, you know, do that today. People burn their kids up, abortions and all that stuff. But all that stuff come from Babylon, where those peoples was placed in our land in 722 BC, but they had to lay low. You see what I'm saying? They had to lay low because they was placed there kind of like doing King Hezekiah time. Them people came to the Passover dinner. See, if you read Second Chronicles, Second Chronicles chapter 30, verse 25. Second Chronicles 30, verse 25. You'll see that everybody had to come to the Passover dinner because King Hezekiah wasn't playing. You know, and it said, and all the congregation of Judah with the priests and the Levites and all the congregation come out of Israel, and the strangers that come out of the land of Israel that dwelt in Judah rejoice. See, they came from Samaria, the northern kingdom, and went to Judah and went to Passover, you know. And also, if you read Second Chronicles chapter 30, written in 715 BC, you'll see that it's no lost tribes and that King Hezekiah had everybody there. You know what I'm saying? All the tribes. And then the tribes that's not mentioned in King Hezekiah time gonna be mentioned in his great grandson time, King Josiah, you know, around about 640 BC, you know, and He mentioned, Israel, and then he cleaned the land up from the Egyptian worship. You see what I'm saying? That was going on from the time of Jeroboam, from like 931 BC to King Josiah cleaned it up. I think it was like about 285 years we was on that Egyptian religion, but he cleaned it up. And he made those Sephardims, them people, follow the law. But the Egyptians killed King Josiah, and we went back to the Egyptian religion, and then we ran into Africa, the 99%, and then that 1% that was taken to Babylon came back home to them Babylonian scribes, and them other peoples was there. See, we didn't worship no God's son. The exiles didn't, Ezra, Nehemiah, Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi. And then when the Greeks come in and displaced them and got rid of the exiles for mixing, then Jewish history start. And Jewish history gonna be them Sephardims and them other peoples. And they practice God's sons and stuff like that. That's why come when they wrote that Jesus story and fixed that story together, he didn't know nothing about the Tanakh. See, if Jesus was really a God's son, and if it was Hebrews in the New Testament, they would have told him, hey, the Queen of Heaven worshipers, the majority of our people went into Africa to worship the Egyptian religion. You see what I'm saying? But that didn't happen. When that Jesus fella was born, man, he went to Egypt. They folks took him to Egypt when the Greeks controlled it since 332 BC. And then they went back to the promised land, to Jerusalem, and lived among the Greeks and the Romans and the other occupiers that had occupied our land. We couldn't live with them people. And then the Maccabees and the Hasmoneans, all those folks are the Sephardims, the Sephardi Jews. You see what I'm saying? They got Hebrew names too after living in our land for all them years, for since 722 BC to around about Jesus' time. Is almost 800 years they was there. So with no interruptions. So that they gonna think that they Hebrews and they gonna have Hebrew names. But even the Canaanites spoke Hebrew. So everybody gonna have Hebrew names. You see what I'm saying? And when we went into Africa in the book of Jeremiah to worship the Egyptian religion, them people was still there. And then when the exiles come back home, and then they was gotten rid of real fast, just like the prophet Isaiah said, then that's when they start writing that God's son stuff. You see, the Sephardi Jews from Babylon, they gonna write some history about a God's son. They gonna create a history about a God's son. That's why come Jesus are nowhere in the New Testament dealing with his disciples did they know that the Hebrews had ran into Egypt, into Africa to worship and live. That's in the book of Jeremiah, plain as day. And the Tanakh was around in that time. Israelite brotherhood. And then another thing, the people from the Discopolis cities, it's a name throughout all the New Testament. Throughout the New Testament, they talk about the Discopolis cities, and that's where Jesus kicked it at. All right, how about the Discopolis cities? The head city was Scythopolis. Scythopolis were the Scythians that had settled in the northern kingdom during the Babylonian wars. When they chased us into Africa in the book of Jeremiah, they came with the Chaldeans under the name Scythian. Scythian is a code name for Ashkenazi in history. You see what I'm saying? So Jesus had them as members, and they killed Hebrews. They killed Hebrews. They even put King Zedekiah eyes out. You see what I'm saying? And Jesus had them as members. Ain't no way in the world that the New Testament people could be Hebrews and then not know about the people that ran into Africa, the millions that broke the covenant. If you go to Jeremiah chapter 44, chapter 44, chapter 44, verse 15, 16, 17, and 18. Then all the men which knew that their wives had burned incense unto other gods, and all the women that stood by, a great multitude, all the people that dwelt in the land of Egypt and Pantheros, answered Jeremiah, saying, As for the word that thou hast spoken unto us in the name of the Elohim, we will not hearken unto thee, but we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouths to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven. But we will certainly do so whatever thing go forth out of our own mouth to burn incense unto the Queen of Heaven, to pour out drink offerings unto her. As we have done, we and our fathers, our kings, our princes, in the streets of Jerusalem and in the streets of Judah. For then had we plenty of victuals, food, and were well, and saw no evil. But since we left off to burn incense to the Queen of Heaven, we have wanted all things, and have been consumed by the sword and by famine. See, we thought that because after the Egyptians killed King Josiah and we went back to the Egyptian religion, we was tricked into believing that the reason that the Babylonians was coming to get us and burning our land up was because we wasn't doing Egyptian religion. That's what broke the covenant. We would be still in the promised land right now if it wasn't for that act right there. See, it wouldn't have been no transatlantic slave trade. And Jesus had a chance to stop the transatlantic slave trade if he was this God's son. And he had went into Egypt and went into Africa and searched and found the Hebrews. You see what I'm saying? See, we ain't know nothing about no Jesus. That's how you know that history in the New Testament is false, especially when they say that the Hebrews ran into Egypt and across North Africa in 70 AD because Herod temple was destroyed. Remember, Herod was a full-blown Edomite, a full-blooded Edomite. And Herod built that temple in 20 BC that Jesus didn't even know wasn't holy. And he prayed in there and called it his father house. You see what I'm saying? And supposed to been trying to preserve Herod's temple, who was an Edomite. See, that stuff is wrong right there. That's evil. That's blasphemous. See, because the Creator said that the Edomites shouldn't be in the promised land, and the Edomites didn't have no right to build no temple. You see what I'm saying? That's what the prophet the minister prophet that go Obadiah go deep into the hatred of Edom and how they occupied the land and helped the Chaldeans and the other peoples take over our land and drove us out the land. And then he heard go build a temple in 20 BC, and then this Jesus fella go worship in it. You see what I'm saying? And then I'm going to tell you another thing. In 130 BC, it's this fella named John Heinekes. This is 130 years before Jesus was born. This fella, he was a Maccabean Hasmonean leader. Those gonna be them Sephardi folks that acquired Hebrew names and stuff. They done. You know what I'm saying? He converted the whole Edom nation, the whole Edomite nation. He converted the whole Edomite nation to the Jewish religion and Jewish faith. In 130 BC, that by the time that Jesus was born, that, you know what I'm saying, they was all one. He didn't even know nothing about no Edomites. He ain't never mentioned no Edomite because he was one. You see what I'm saying? He was one and he was tenant with one. You see what I'm saying? That's why come he never fussed about the Edomites being in the promised land and why they there. And that, man, it should have been a big old ruckus about that. But he didn't do that because John Heinekes had converted all of them in 130 BC. And by time 20 BC came, they was all one. They was all mixed. The Sephardims, those are kind of like Edomite, you know what I'm saying, Jews mixed with, all the other people, Ammonites, Moabites, and Amorites, you know what I'm saying, all of them mixed together. But anyway, in 130 BC, when John Heinekes converted all those Jews to Edom. You know what I'm saying? They even mixed with the Greeks. So them people couldn't have been Hebrews because, you know what I'm saying, the exiles was cut off. And if y'all trying to say that our heritage extended over to the New Testament, then y'all saying that the Greeks and all the folks, the Jews today, and everybody is Hebrews. And that's not so, because the Tanakh show their origin, like I'm showing you their origin. This the Israelite brotherhood. You ain't pulling no fast one on us with our history. You ain't fooling us with our history. And what we know, we're going to let it out to the other Hebrews so we can be one. But anyway, John Heinekes converted all Edom in 130 BC, and they became one. To whereas when Herod built that temple in 20 BC and Jesus prayed in it, you see what I'm saying, and called it his daddy house, it wasn't no big problem. He was only mad at Herod because of some immoral things that Herod did, not that Herod built a temple where he wasn't supposed to. See, they had took the exile temples down. Man, they put pig blood and everything, and man, it was destroyed quite a few times. But anyway, Herod took it all the way down to the ground and built a new one, and that was his temple that was destroyed. See, what y'all don't know is that Ashkenazi had about 300 Ashkenazi under the name Scythian. They lived in Scythopolis. You see what I'm saying? They lived in Scythopolis, and they built synagogues. You see what I'm saying? That's why I be laughing when y'all say that they talking about that Jesus say those are the synagogue of Satan who say they are Jews and are not. Y'all don't know that that Edomite Jesus is talking about those those Scythians, the Ashkenazi Jews that had settled in the Promised Land in 588 BC during the Assyrian Wars. You see, Jesus' kinfolks had a head start because they was placed during the Assyrian captivity. So they would think that they was the original Hebrews after we left, and then Ashkenazi come in under the Chaldeans. See, and those are the people that made up the New Testament people, because the Greeks destroyed the exiles while the millions in the book of Jeremiah was in Africa, and then these people start claiming our heritage. That's why I say y'all have to learn the difference between Jewish history and Hebrew Israelite history, because the majority of y'all don't even know the difference, and that it is a difference. Where the Israelite Brotherhood showing you a difference between Israelite history and Jewish history. Ain't nowhere in the world you gonna be able to say that the Sephardi Jews don't have a history or that Ashkenazi don't have a history. You'll be sounding like a fool. You see what I'm saying? Well, that's the history that y'all teach and claim is y'all's. I'm showing y'all that our history was cut off, the exile history was cut off, and that them other people history is the New Testament history. Look, you see Scythopolis right there. You see John Heinekes went to Scythopolis. It's right there. It's right there. Scythopolis. Scythopolis. That's where the Scythians settled up at. You see, Ashkenazi and the Sephardi Jews try to cover their history, and they in cahoots doing that. But the Babylonian scribes who constructed the whole history of the Hebrews after we abandoned the history is the Sephardi Jews. You see what I'm saying? The Sephardi Jews, and they responsible for Western history. All the history that's been wrote down in English, we Hebrews ain't wrote had no colleges and institutions nowhere, and wrote books and wrote Talmuds and all these books, and that Hebrew history just continued on until, you know what I'm saying, uh, up to now. Now our history ended with the Tanakh. See what I'm saying? Because the exiles messed up and they couldn't pass heritage over to them Greeks and them other folks that was in the land. It was people in the land before the Greeks showed up. And we couldn't mix with them and pass our heritage to the Moabites, the Ammonites, and the Amorites. And man, it was a whole host of all our enemies was there. But all our enemies that had pigmentation became one in the Sephardi Jews. In the name Sepharavim, they believe in mixing. See, that's where you get that mixing culture from, where they trying to make everybody one, because they go back to their Babylonian roots. You see what I'm saying? They was there at the time with Babel. They genes go all the way back to then when Nimrod tried to have one government, one world government, and he be the king over that. See, that's why come the Jews be pushing for that one world government. It's because